Greetings and salutations, all you absolutely beautiful individuals. It is another Epi of League Online here. Marking a few beautifuls today, and it feels like it's been a long time coming. It feels like years, even though it's been weeks or months. We actually have games that have implication on standings in the real format, the real league to start 2025. Real deal games, Mark. I can't believe it.
I say it every year when this time rolls around. Give yourself a pat on the back. Go get yourself a nice little treat from the fridge or the pantry, whatever it is. Celebrate. You made it back around. From Worlds to the start of a new season, we are here. The LPL taking things off on the weekend. And heck, keeping it on rolling every day of the week. The LPL, we're back in business.
It's just the first domino to fall of the major regions. And even though we weren't getting necessarily marquee matchups on the opening weekend, and truthfully for the whole first week of the LPL, really, but it's still this new entire map, this new entire game with all these changes, and obviously new faces in some new places. We got things kicked off on the Sunday with Waybo against OMG, and obviously Waybo a little different without Tarzan, but Yahoo, Light, and Breathe are the mainstay guys here, and Breathe had himself a damn good series. We've talked about this being maybe a coming out type of season for him as he becomes more of a focal point on this squad and starting things off on the right foot.
Yes, and this is the important thing to keep track of with Waybo this year, as you talked about, is that it is prime for Breathe to take another step forward, to take more control of this team and its destiny. And you saw that in this series, the firepower he was able to bring with the rest of the team. That's not to say without some shaky moments, without some chances for OMG. But as we're going to talk about a little bit later in the game, I think the new changes, the new breath of life that League of Legends has in 2025, stifling some of those chances for OMG. Let's just put it that way.
Yeah, pretty much all three of these games, there's an Atakhan moment for Waybo, getting that little voracious revive, and I mean, it's multiple team fights where normally OMG, they get 3 kills, they have control of the map, they can get back and come back into this game, but it's just a reset for Waybo to spawn in the fountain and run back, or you overextend trying to end the game, you almost get aced, and it doesn't matter, it's just a reset for you to run over to Baron.
And this is going to be something to talk about and debate and go through the evolution and feeling of it throughout the course of however long this Atakhan experiment rolls around in League of Legends. But in general, it's really just an adjustment, a pivot point of what you come to expect, because so many times you're rewarding, getting all of your farm, getting to these certain item spikes. We don't need this objective necessarily having that strategy of understanding what your power truly is, what your win conditions are, all these things. All of a sudden, there's another trump card out there on the map, and it's out there early in the way that you can start building out to this Atakhan. And we saw that with Waybo and how they were prioritizing it and getting that massive swing back in their favor and getting to essentially more or less turn your brain completely off and just go wild out there on the rift with no repercussion, because you know that you are getting that reset coming back around.
And resets were the theme of that third game, as it was the light show on the Jinx. It was basically 20 minutes of powering up, waiting for this guy to get a few items. And even then, we get a sign of the power of tanks early on in this patch, as my God, Zika's Cassante was absolutely unkillable. If you had him 100-0, it probably would have been, not joking, 100+ auto attacks from the Jinx to kill him.
Oh no, I don't want to see that. I don't want to see that. We've already seen that a couple times with some tanks, and we always know tanks find an opportunity to shine somewhere throughout the year, and whether that's going to be multiple times or not, usually it's early in the year we get some of these type of performances. So I'm keeping an eye on that one, and unfortunately, the Cassante has stuck around for another year.
Yeah, it doesn't matter if it's tanks or broken, it's Cassante we've been talking about in this capacity for going on 2+ years now at this point. But 3-0 for Waybo to kick things off on their 2025 season. Then we had Thunder Talk versus LNG for day 2 action. Obviously, this is a very different looking LNG without Scout. But I think people still probably would have had them as favorites against ThunderTalk, but after dropping game 1, it was 3 in a row for ThunderTalk. And remember, the theme to look at this year across all these, at least first splits, is the Fearless Draft, as we got game 4 in this one. And even 4 games into a Fearless Draft, there weren't super crazy picks, really. Okay, we got a Twitch. We had a Victor at times in both of these series, but 4 games in and Twitch Blitzcrank are the spiciest picks. Like, I don't know.
I think we're going to have to wait and see this one play out a little bit more, and especially given that now it's going to be almost, well, it will be every region rolling through in some type of capacity through the year, Fearless Draft. We're going to have to see how that plays out, but especially right now, early indication in the LPL and combining with kind of most of the games, I'll leave some of them in the special spicy category from last year. Most of the games did trend towards that, where it did take until that 4th game to start seeing a pick or 2 creep in, and especially if you got to that 5th game in a Fearless series where you did start to really see that dynamic of a draft change.
And this is still obviously so early, and really, even what this means, if you're not getting crazy picks by game 4, even game 5, that just means there's a lot of meta stable and meta viable champions, which is always a good state for the game to be in.
And I think that's something that we saw throughout T1's World Championship runs, really, right? Is that there is maybe a number 1, number 2, number 3 type of thing, but that doesn't mean that option number 4, number 5, number 6 can't get the job done as well, or can't be oppressive in the type of ways that some of these other champions are. And I think that we're going to see that certainly through Fearless Draft, where we're going to be expanding upon the hot list items in the draft.
But this ThunderTalk upset, again, light upset over LNG, makes for what is, we already thought, going to be a spicy Group C outside of BLG, who's vying for that 2nd spot, probably EDG in the driver's seat, but they're not going to be massive favorites over anyone in ThunderTalk or LNG. Way too early to actually be analyzing much about this patch, but that doesn't mean Riot can't drop some numbers. Obviously, they're pulling, these are solo queue numbers after hardly a couple days of data to talk about on this actual Season 25 patch number 1, but pulling out some win rates comparing to last year, because, you know, people have talked about snowballing, maybe being out of control in this new look one, but what jumps out are obviously the new changes, and that's teams that get Atakhan have a 78.9, almost 79% win rate, which is less than the 82% win rate people get when they kill Baron. But Baron you can get multiple times. Atakhan, you know, only getting once. And if you're winning 79% of the time when you kill a neutral objective at 20 minutes, that sounds bad.
Well, I'd also want to know how many of these win percentages are in there of teams that are simply getting that first Baron in an absolute stomp, and then it's, you know, FF at 15, you know, well, if you can't 15 for Baron, but you know what I mean, guys, when you're talking about those style of games in solo queue. These numbers, they don't necessarily paint exactly the picture that I think a lot of people are experiencing when they're playing through solo queue. It's pretty close, but it's not exactly to the extent where it feels as oppressive as it is when you're talking about things like Atakhan, where it feels like it's a 90 to 95% win rate type of thing, but seeing it a little bit less obviously is one of these things to examine in those numbers. But again, paints the picture. Hey, guess what? If you have a team that is coordinated and able to go at some of these objectives, you're going to do better than most of other teams.
And that's kind of going to be a focal point, even more so in solo queue now, because obviously it's already been a thing in team play for years, but prioritizing grouping up early on, right? And that's a combination with Atakhan obviously choosing if you want him top side or bot side, where you're going to be fighting. And then, of course, these feats of strength are the other thing to talk about, which is a 74% win rate, whichever team is picking up those honors. But obviously, you're seeing a lot more emphasis on that team play early, contesting dragons, not giving away mindless, needless first bloods, which we're so used to seeing. But obviously, comparing these numbers to solo queue versus team play is going to be completely different.
It almost feels like the LCS, LEC-ifying of the game compared to the LCK, where it used to simply be, screw you guys, I'm not grouping for this. I'm getting my farm. I'm making sure I get this next item. I'm going to be the problem that they have to deal with because I'm making sure that I'm maximizing all the efficiency, the gold, the income that I'm getting. The other guy, he's walked all the way to the thing, and now he's walking all the way back. He's missed 2 waves. Boom, I'm ahead. These type of situations. Now it's screw your farm, man. We need you at this objective because we're 2 out of 3 on our feats of strength. Let's go. Let's get this additional power bump for the team. It's going to be a different adjustment for some squads. I think this is absolutely more of a game-breaking change compared to some of the other changes we've seen in the off seasons. And I thought last year, and especially the changes to the map where we've had before, were going to be very impactful. This might be even more so in the way that it changes your prioritization out there on the Rift.
And it's not the first time we've seen, these early objectives kind of completely shape the play style and meta. Think of the evolution of what Rift Herald has been in the past and come to be. There were memes about, I think it was like Clutch, remember? At like 6 minutes on the dot, everyone's running it to this Rift Herald to fight, and that was a staple in the meta for like an entire season.
Yeah, and I think that that's one of the things that we are going to see from this is that prioritization. And then, again, I think it's going to lead to some sloppy gameplay because you are going to have that trying to figure out the risk-reward evaluation of what you can get, what you can gain, how far it sets you up for this feats of strength. And if you mess up, what that sets your opponent up for what he's going to be able to do. I think that's going to be the interesting risk reward we're going to see coming from this. I think obviously my own personal taste so far, and especially seeing a little brief example in the pro play, it needs to be tuned. It needs to be tuned. And this is one of those ones where it needs to be tuned so significantly. I want it taken away from the game. Work on it on the side. Then you can bring it back, kind of like Chemtech Soul, where it was so bad, needed to be instantly taken out type of thing. So that's where my feelings early are on about some of these changes.
Yeah, and the revive factor itself, I think, is the thing that's going to be looked at before any international. This first last stand is going to happen because it's going to impact the game too much. It's so forgiving for you to just be able to turn your brain off and have this kind of get out of jail free card where you're just going to revive, even though your team made an egregious mistake that in seasons past could throw the whole game, and you're not punished at all.
You got to have consequences for all these actions, for these choices, for how bold you try to be on the Rift. Atakhan just gets rid of that. You don't have any type of consequence. There is no punishment. There is no reward on the other side type of thing. Don't like it. We need to work on that one. And especially as you called out, especially before we get to one of these international events, that first stand.
It's just the LPL that's kicking off, but we are days away from the LCK getting going, which means it's time for another refresher course on the LCK format because it is vastly different than what we're getting in the LPL when we went over what's going down there. Still 3 splits, but very different in the LCK. We'll just look at the LCK Cup, which is the lead up to that first international event. And if you haven't been paying attention in the off season, they've already done this 2-group format that was drafted by Hanwha Life and Gen G, who were the finalists from the 2024 summer championship, and you're actually picking the best team you want because these 2 squads or these 2 groups are going to be going head to head, and we're adding up the win total for those 2 groups, which is why Hanwha Life, to the surprise of no one, picked T1 with that first overall pick.
Of course, yes, T1, the defending world champions, once again returning to the LCK, needing to almost establish themselves again in the LCK, their own domestic region, to recapture the title, to reignite the flames of the fan base domestically. This is going to be something we're looking at. The very smart pick by Hanwha Life, and yes, paints that picture immediately that this is not about picking who you're going to beat in your group, picking who you want to prop up your group and bring in the numbers, bring in those results for your side.
Yeah, so you're playing every team on the opposite side once, so that should be 5 best of 3s, and then it is whichever group has the most wins total will be dubbed the winners group. Very clever naming system there. The top 3 from those winners groups skip the play-in stage, advance right to the best of 5 playoff bracket. The bottom 2 teams from that winners group and the top 4 teams from the losers group move into that play-in stage. The one last place team in losers is out. The split's over. So you're playing 5 best of 5s and your split's over.
know what this means. Maybe the LEC is better than we thought they were. Maybe the LCK is just as bad as the LEC at rolling through a schedule. This is one of the pitfalls, and absolutely it's something where maybe you are in favor of it. You say that, yes, this is that strict penalty punishment, that, opportunity that you do not get, that everybody else is practicing working still in that competitive environment for, because you were so poor at the beginning of the year type of situation. Personally, not a fan of seeing one of these teams on the sideline for so long and like that one, but that's the way it rolls.
I mean, how do you improve very much in 5 best of 3s, and then you're basically going to be off for like a month and a half?
And especially, at least in the LEC, you've got, company and misery down at the bottom hanging out with you that is also out in this one. The LCK, you're the only ones out at this point.
You're scrimming against the challenger teams for the rest of the split, I guess, at that point. But they're eliminated, and then it's these other 6 teams will go to the play-in stage, which is a shorter bracket and similar to the play-in stage from the World Championship, where you'll have some qualification matches where that last quali match will be best of 5, and 3 teams from there will join the top 3 from that winners group for what's a pretty standard double elim bracket that we're used to seeing, that's going to be best of 5 across the board. And of course, all of this will be Fearless Draft, which is, again, the headline for all these first splits.
And as we saw in the LPL, I don't anticipate seeing anything all that crazy, especially with it being best of 3 most of the way through this, until we get the best of 5 opportunities, or maybe game 4, game 5, you start to see that pop up. Fearless in the LCK, I'm expecting to be a little more standard than maybe the LPL.
Yeah, and that's always going to be the case probably for pick ban. But obviously, it can be a little bit convoluted, confusing, this format. But I do like, at the very least, the first part of this, the kind of split into 2 groups, having that almost for fun factor with 2 captain teams picking the most stacked side that they can. That gives it a nice little fun flavor to kick off the year.
I think in the positive sense, I'm viewing this first cup, the LCK Cup, it's leading into first stand, as very much a good first impression in this new change up to being a 3 split type of format and how it's going to work through, where I think this is absolutely going to set a template where you can then tweak, you can improve, you can make a couple changes in the future for 2026 type of thing. That's my positive spin on this one right now.
And I'm assuming that the win total will be included, like it's going to be best of 3. So, if you go 2-1, you still get the one win on your side. So it'll probably actually be a decent number of games and win total to look at between the 2 squads. And there'll be lots of trash talking because it is kind of 2 teams. So yeah, definitely excited for that. And there'll be no shortage of best of 3s and 5s with this new format, which is exactly what you want to be seeing when this Fearless Draft stuff does roll around. So actual action, we look at some of the week 1 matchups over in the LCK, and you see day 1, you see, okay, the new look Freaks versus Nongshim, DRX, and Bro, and normally you're saying that looks like the bottom 4 teams in the LCK, but no! This is the defending champion Kespa Cup OK Savings Bank Brion boys that actually looking like a playoff team.
And it's going to have to look like a playoff team right from the get-go if they want to continue this momentum, keep that hype, keep that expectation and interest in them and what they're able to do and where they will find themselves amongst that playoff power shuffle in the LCK. If we immediately see those struggles and a return back to more so than normalcy for the Bros, I think you're instantly going to feel that deflation for a lot of people from the what hype has been built up from that Kespa Cup run. I think there should be a little bit of hype, a little bit more excitement as we've talked about this team and why they had that success at the Kespa Cup heading into this year. But you laid it out. Maybe not a traditional exciting matchup to lead us off, but I'm feeling it for the Bros and I'm feeling hopeful.
Just don't get 10th. Don't get bottom last in the losers group and you're good, Bros. They're starting with a slow trajectory up with a matchup against DRX. We don't have to wait long, though, for some marquee matchups because on the Thursday, day 2, T1 versus D plus Kia, and that's obviously Doran making his official debut. I'm not counting the Red Bull event as his debut with T1, and he gets to match up against a rookie in CU for D plus. I don't know if that's good or bad for Doran.
I'll take it in the good category. Glass half full type of situation. This is what you want for Doran. This type of inexperience on the other side and where you are coming from and being in a fresh situation. Absolutely. I'll take as many advantages, any little thing in your corner that you can get in one of these ones for Doran. Even if you are on a Titan team like T1, you take anything that you can. And for D plus Kia, a very good instant measuring stick. See where you are. How competitive can you be? Where are you lacking in these type of regards against a team like T1, where we again expect them to be towards that very top of the LCK?
And the ramp up goes even quicker because Friday, day 3, we get Gen G versus Hanwha Life right on the table.
Yes, and this is the one, believe it or not, that I have been waiting for the most. You mostly would expect a T1, even a T1 fan. I'm telling you, it's a Hanwha Life Gen G rematch. It is the revenge for Gen G in so many aspects that they need to get through. And for Hanwha Life, this is that reestablishing, that reinsertion to everybody that no, last year was not a fluke. This is one of the new teams at the elite level in the LCK, and especially with the new marquee edition of the offseason, Mr. Zeus in the top side.
Yeah, and I mean, with Ruler also coming back to Gen G, even though there's hardly any changes between these two powerhouses, it feels like they both have something fresh to prove with new players on their lineup who, in their own right, are, best in the world conversation.
And significant players, right? You don't bring in Zeus and Ruler to any team and not feel the change, the shift in how they want to play. Who is the key domino for the squad? Gonna be Zeus. It's gonna be Ruler, most likely, even on star stacked out teams like Chovy, like Mr. Zeka, like Viper, like Keen in the top side. It doesn't matter when you're looking at both these teams. Again, the change in having these two players, Zeus and Ruler respectively, for their teams is going to be fantastic, and this matchup will not disappoint. I'm expecting big time fireworks. The distance between Mr. Hanwha Life and Gen G.
And for the two teams that were already in finals last year, you feel like those offseason changes make them even bigger hype favorites, even bigger expectations, which is insane because they were, world championship aspirations for both of these squads. But that is it today for League Unlock. Eric and Mark here with you. Wonderful people. As always, thanks for hanging out and supporting, and we will catch you